After being expelled from the Galactic Collective for their dangerous unpredictability, humans establish a thriving civilization in unexplored space. When a catastrophic threat emerges that could destroy the galaxy, the collective must confront whether their rigid methods can save them, or if they need the very chaos they fear. The great amphitheater of the Galactic Collective's central chamber had never been so silent. Thousands of crystalline orbs housing the consciousness of the Etherian representatives hung motionless in their anti-gravity fields. The serpentine Draconis delegates had ceased their usual rhythmic swaying, and even the quantum state Nexians had coalesced into solid forms, a rare sign of their undivided attention. Ambassador Lyra Starweaver stood before them, her white diplomatic robes a stark contrast against the obsidian podium. Her augmented eyes, glowing faintly with neural enhancements, surveyed the assembled representatives of 5,000 civilizations. This would be humanity's final address to the collective. "You fear us," she began, her voice carrying through the chamber without technological assistance, a deliberate choice that made several delegates shift uncomfortably. "Not for our weapons, which you've outmatched, not for our technology, which you've surpassed. You fear us because we refuse to be predicted." High Counselor Zixix of the Etherians pulsed with a dismissive blue light. "Your species introduces chaos into every system you touch. Your solutions violate established protocol. Your methods defy millennia of proven methodology. The recent quantum drive-in prevented the collapse of the Andromeda Bridge," Lyra interrupted, causing gasps among the more traditional species. "Yes." Lieutenant Hyperion reversed the polarity of the entire network without authorization. "Yes, he violated 17 safety protocols. And yes, he saved 12 billion lives by doing so. Through luck," hissed Archive Master Thex of the Draconis Confederation. "Through innovation," Lyra countered. "While your experts spent 6 hours debating proper procedures, one human spent 6 minutes trying something new. You call it reckless. We call it adapt." The Nexian representative shimmered in agitation. "Your species' unpredictability poses an existential threat to galactic stability. The mathematics are irrefutable. Within 3 centuries, human chaos theory will render all standard protocols obsolete." Lyra smiled, a gesture that had always unsettled other species. "Then we accept your exile. But remember this moment. Remember that you're not banishing us because we failed to measure up to your standards. You're banishing us because we refused to be bound by." She removed her neural interface, another gesture that caused murmurs throughout the chamber, and placed it on the podium. "Humanity will depart for the unexplored regions beyond the out. We'll take our chaos with. But ask yourselves this: when you next face a crisis that defies your protocols, when you encounter a problem that doesn't fit your simulations, will your perfect order be enough to save?" As she turned to leave, High Counselor Zixix pulsed one final time. "You speak as if exile is a victory, Ambassador Star." Lyra paused at the chamber's threshold. "No, Counselor. I speak as someone who knows that the most beautiful gardens grow wild." The doors sealed behind her with a finality that echoed through the chamber, marking the end of humanity's membership in the Galactic Collective. None of the assembled delegates could have known that this moment would be remembered not as the day humanity was cast out, but as the day the collective made its greatest. The exodus took 3 years. Humanity gathered its colonies, dismantled its outposts, and ventured into the unknown regions beyond the out. What the collective expected to be our slow descent into isolation became something entirely. Dr. Estrella Novastorm stood at the observation deck of Nova Haven's central spire, watching the quantum crystallization towers rise from the metallic forest. 10 years into exile, and humanity's new capital had already surpassed the architectural wonders of the collective's core world. The towers, with their impossible geometries and shifting forms, embodied everything that had frightened the collective about human innovation. Director, her AI assistant, Eclipse, materialized beside her. "The latest data from the Wild Space Initiative is ready for review." Estrella nodded, her attention still fixed on the city below. "Show me the anomaly readings from sectors." Holographic data streams filled the air around her, each representing a different aspect of human expansion into unexplored space. Where the collective had always approached colonization with rigid protocols and centuries of preparation, humanity had embraced a more dynamic approach. "Conventional wisdom said we couldn't build in quantum flux zones," Astrea mused, manipulating the holographic models with practiced gestures. So we learned to build with them instead. The quantum crystallization towers were proof of that philosophy. Rather than fighting against the natural quantum instabilities of their new home, Nova Haven's architects had incorporated them into The buildings literally evolved, their structures adapting to changes in the quantum field, like leaves turning towards sun. Incoming transmission from the Helios expedition, Eclipse announced. Captain Vega Stormchaser reports they've successfully established another settlement in the Chaos Belt, a region of space the Collective had deemed uninhabitable due to its unpredictable physical laws. Humanity had turned it into a thriving front. Pull up the settlement specs, Astrea. The data materialized before her, showing how the colonists had adapted their technology to work with the belt's shifting reality rather than where collective ships would have been torn apart by the space-time fluctuations. Human vessels now surf them like solar. Dr. Novastorm, a new voice called. Astrea turned to see Orion Celestis, one of her youngest researchers, practically bouncing with excitement. At 22, he epitomized the first generation born in exile, brilliant, unconventional, and utterly unburdened by collective. The quantum harmony experiments, he began, his words tumbling out in a rush. We've achieved something impossible. Astrea raised an eyebrow. Impossible by whose standard? All of them. He projected a simulation showing particles moving in patterns that should have torn reality apart. Instead, they danced in beautiful cosmic choreography. We stopped trying to force quantum particles to behave according to standard models. Instead, we taught them to dance. Astrea's eyes narrowed as she studied the data. You're using harmonic resonance to guide quantum behavior through artistic patterns rather than mathematical constraints. Orion finished. The Collective says, quantum mechanics must be controlled through rigid equations. We proved it can be conducted like a simple. Astrea felt a smile spread across her face. This was exactly why humanity had flourished in exile, where the Collective saw only one path forward. The proven, the tested, the safe humanity saw infinite possibility. Compile the data, she ordered. I want full documentation of your methods, especially the failed attempts. The Collective would have deleted those as irrelevant, but that's where the best learning happens. Orion completed, already pulling up his research. As he worked, Astrea returned her gaze to the quantum crystallization tower. They shimmered in the dying light of Nova Haven's twin suns, their structures perpetually shifting, yet somehow more stable than any static building could be. They were a testament to humanity's greatest strength, the ability to embrace chaos and find beauty in uncertainty. Eclipse, she called to her AI. Send a message to the Count. Tell them. She paused, watching a new crystallization pattern emerge along one of the towers, its form simultaneously random and. Tell them we've stopped trying to conquer the unknown. We've learned to dance with it instead. Little did she know that this philosophy would soon be tested in ways no one could have predicted. The very chaos humanity had embraced was about to become the galaxy's last hope for survival. The first sign that something was wrong came from the edges of Collective's quantum monitoring stations began detecting unusual patterns in the fabric of space-time, distortions that defied standard classification protocol. The Collective's response was predictably methodical. They assembled committees, analyzed historical data, and deployed containment units according to established procedure. None of it. In her private laboratory aboard the research vessel Quantum Dream, Dr. Astrea Novastorm studied the data streams from the patterns reminded her of something. But traditional quantum physics couldn't explain what she was. Orion, she called to her protégé, who was manipulating a holographic representation of the distortion. Does this remind you of our harmony experiment? Orion Celestis paused his calculations, his augmented eyes focusing on the swirling patterns. It's like negative harmony, where our experiments created stable patterns through resonance. This is creating anti-resonance. It's not just destroying space-time, it's unwriting the laws of physics themselves. A priority transmission cut through their discussion. The holographic form of Admiral Terra Nightweaver, commander of Nova Haven's defense fleet, materialized in the lab. Doctor, we've received a priority message from the Collective. The anomaly has breached their quantum containment fields. 3 star systems have already been affected. Astrea's fingers danced through the holographic data. Show me their containment protocols. The information appeared before her, rigid, mathematically perfect solutions that should have worked. but the anomaly seemed to adapt to each countermeasure, as if it were learning from their attempts to stop it. "They're thinking about it wrong," Orion muttered, his hands moving through the data with increasing excitement. "Look at these patterns. The anomaly isn't following any known laws of physics because it's writing new ones. It's not a problem to be contained. It's a conversation we need to join." Astrea finished, understanding dawning in her eyes. She turned to Admiral Nightweaver's hologram. "Tell the Council we need to assemble a research team immediately. And..." She hesitated for a moment. "Inform the Collective that we might have an unconventional approach to their problem. The Collective hasn't exactly been receptive to our methods in the past," the Admiral reminded her. "True," Astrea smiled, watching as Orion began programming a new simulation based on their quantum harmony principles. As if to emphasize her point, another data stream appeared, showing a fourth collective system beginning to destabilize. Their perfect order was unraveling, and all their carefully constructed protocols were useless against this new threat. "Admiral," Astrea said, her voice firm with conviction. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. The very unpredictability that had led to humanity's exile might be the galaxy's only hope for survival. The collective delegation's arrival at Nova Haven was a study in contrast. Their ships, perfect spheres of polished chromium, hung motionless against the backdrop of the city's ever-shifting quantum crystallization towers. High Counselor Zixix, their consciousness now housed in a more portable crystalline matrix, led the procession through Nova Haven's central research facility. "This is unsettling," the Etherian representative pulsed, observing how the facility's architecture seemed to breathe with quantum fluctuations. "How can you maintain experimental precision in such unstable conditions?" "By embracing the instability," Orion Celestis explained, leading the delegation through a series of laboratories where researchers worked with equipment that would have given collective safety inspectors immediate system. Quantum particles danced through open-air containment fields, their patterns shifting in response to the researchers. "Impossible," declared Archive Master Thex, their serpentine form coiling tighter in distress. "Your methods violate every established principle of quantum manipulation." Orion smiled, stopping before a massive chamber where scientists were literally conducting quantum experiments through interpretive data. Their movements generated complex harmonic patterns in the quantum field, creating stable configurations that no equation could have predicted. "We stopped trying to force quantum mechanics to follow our," he explained, watching as a young researcher's pirouette caused a cascade of quantum alignments. "Instead, we learned to follow its dance." The delegation's horror only grew as they toured more facilities. They saw quantum computers that operated on artistic principles rather than binary logic, propulsion systems that harvested chaos itself for energy, and research teams that included not just scientists but musicians and dancers. "This is what you propose to use against the anomaly?" Zixix's crystalline form flickered with disbelief. "Creative interpretation? Interpretive dance? The fate of the galaxy cannot depend on such innovation?" Dr. Novastorm suggested, joining the group. "The same innovation you exiled us for. How many systems have you lost while trying to solve this crisis with traditional methods?" The silence was answer enough. 7 systems had already been consumed by the spreading anomaly, their physical laws unwritten from existence. The Collective's perfect equations and immaculate protocols had proved useless against this unprecedented. "Show them, Orion," Astrea commanded. Orion activated this central holographic array, filling the chamber with a real-time visualization of the anomaly's path. Then, with a gesture, he overlaid the data from their quantum harmony experiments. The similarities were undeniable. "The anomaly isn't just destroying reality," he explained, his augmented eyes tracking the patterns. "It's rewriting it with its own chaotic symbols. Your containment methods failed because you tried to impose order on chaos. We propose to join its dance and gradually alter it." "You want to dance with a phenomenon that's unwriting the laws of physics?" Archive Master Thex's scales rattled with incredulity. "Precisely." Orion manipulated the hologram, showing simulations of their proposed solution. We've developed a way to generate quantum harmonies that can resonate with the anomalies. By gradually introducing our own variations into its dance, we can guide it towards stability rather than trying to force it into submission. High Counselor Zixix pulsed rapidly, their crystalline matrix processing the implications, the risk, the variables. There are too many unknowns. That's exactly why it will, Astrea interjected. The anomaly adapts to every predictable response. But chaos? Creativity? These are the only tools it hasn't encountered. The delegation watched as another simulation played out, showing how their quantum harmony approach could potentially stabilize the anomaly. It was beautiful, terrifying, and completely unlike anything in the collective's vast archives of scientific knowledge. If we do this, Zixix said slowly, it would mean admitting that our entire approach to understanding the universe has been incomplete. Astrea finished diplomatically. Not wrong, just incomplete. Sometimes the universe doesn't need to be controlled. Sometimes it just needs a new dance. As if to emphasize her point, the quantum crystallization towers visible through the chamber's windows shifted into a new configuration, their patterns echoing the very harmonies they proposed to use against the anomaly. The collective delegation watched, their horror gradually transforming into something else, possibility. The implementation of Operation Quantum Dance, as Orion had whimsically named it, challenged everything the collective believed about scientific methodology. The primary quantum harmonics facility on Nova Haven became a bizarre fusion of laboratory and performance space, where scientists and artists worked in perfect synchronization. The anomaly had consumed its 8th system when they began their first attempt. In the center of the massive chamber, Orion stood surrounded by quantum manipulation fields that responded to his every. The collective representatives watched from behind safety barriers, barriers that Dr. Novastorm knew were more for their comfort than actual protection. Beginning harmonic sequence alpha, Orion announced, his augmented eyes glowing as they tracked quantum patterns invisible to normal. His movements started slow, deliberate, a quantum physicist performing a ballet with reality. Around him, other researchers moved in complementary patterns, each adding their own harmonies to the quantum symphony they were. The first attempts failed spectacularly. The anomaly's chaos proved more complex than they'd anticipated, its patterns shifting faster than they could adapt. But where the collective would have retreated to recalculate, the human team simply improvised. It's not responding to structured harmonies, Orion called out during their 7th attempt, his body moving in increasingly complex patterns. We need to let go of trying to lead the dance. Dr. Novastorm understood immediately. Reconfigure to responsive harmonics. Don't try to impose patterns. Reflect and amplify what the anomaly is already doing. The change in approach was dramatic. Instead of trying to counter the anomaly's chaos with their own ordered patterns, they began to mirror its chaos, while subtly introducing variation. It was like learning to dance with a partner by first matching their steps, then gradually introducing new elements to the choreography. For the first time, they saw the anomaly's expansion rate begin to. Impossible. High Counselor Zixix pulsed, their crystalline matrix vibrating with agitation. They're achieving stability through calculated instability. Archive Master Thex's scales shimmered as they processed the data. The harmonics. They're not containing the anomaly. They're communicating? Not exactly, Dr. Novastorm explained, watching as Orion's team continued their quantum dance. We're showing it new ways to express its chaos, without unwriting reality. Think of it like teaching a wildfire how to burn, without destroying everything it touches. The collective delegates struggled to process this approach. Their entire civilization was built on the principle of imposing order on chaos. The idea of working with chaos, of turning it into a creative force rather than trying to eliminate it, challenged millennia of their scientific. But as they watched the quantum harmonics team work, as they saw the anomaly's patterns begin to shift from destructive chaos to creative complexity, they couldn't deny the results. The very unpredictability they had feared, had exiled humanity for, was proving to be the key to saving the galaxy. The moment of truth arrived 3 days after their initial breakthrough. The anomaly had paused its expansion, but remained a threat to the existing affected systems. In Nova Haven's central quantum harmonics chamber, representatives from both humanity and the collective gathered for what would either be their greatest triumph or their final failure. The quantum harmonic network is ready, Orion announced, his voice steady despite the weight of trillion lives depending on their success. Around him, The chamber had been transformed into what the collective delegates could only describe as a quantum orchestra pit. Human researchers stood at various harmonic stations, each ready to contribute their part to the unprecedented symphony they were about to perform. Dr. Novastorm monitored the master control interface, where streams of data flowed like musical notes across a cosmic scale. The anomaly's patterns have stabilized in response to our preliminary harmonics. We're ready to begin the full convergence sequence. High Counselor Zixix's crystalline form pulsed with an emotion that might have been hope or terror. All collective quantum amplification stations are synchronized with your network, though I still cannot comprehend how this performance will restore normal physics to the affected systems. Understanding isn't required for success, Orion replied with a smile, taking his position at the central harmonic focus. The universe didn't read our physics textbooks. Sometimes we have to let go of understanding and simply become part of the dance. The operation began with a subtle shift in the quantum field. Orion's movements, refined through countless hours of practice, set up the initial harmonic pattern. Other researchers joined in, each adding their own elements to the quantum symphony. The chamber filled with swirling patterns of energy that would have seemed chaotic to any observer, but contained subtle, intricate structures that grew more complex with each passing moment. Anomaly is responding. Doctor, Novastorm called out, watching the data streams. It's beginning to mirror our harmonic patterns. Collective amplification stations prepare to synchronize on my mark. This was the crucial moment, the point where rigid collective technology would have to work in concert with humanity's creative chaos. The delegates watched in astonishment as their perfectly calibrated quantum amplifiers began pulsing in rhythm with the human researchers' movements. Synchronization achieving critical resonance, Orion announced, his augmented eyes tracking patterns within patterns. Beginning Phase 2, Transitional Harmony. The quantum dance shifted. Where before they had merely mirrored the anomaly's chaos, now they began introducing new elements. It was like teaching a new language through music. Each pattern they created showed the anomaly new ways to express itself without unwriting the fundamental laws of physics. Archive Master Thex's scales rippled with excitement. The affected systems, the laws of physics are beginning to stabilize, but not returning to their original state. They're finding a new equilibrium, Dr. Novastorm explained, her fingers dancing across control interfaces. We're not forcing the universe back to its old patterns. We're helping it discover new ones that can coexist with normal spacetime. The process was beautiful to witness. In the affected systems, reality itself seemed to dance between states before settling into new configurations. Physics still worked, but with subtle variations that reflected the harmony between order and chaos. Final convergence approaching, Orion called out, his movements becoming more intricate as he guided the quantum harmonics toward their culmination. Collective stations, prepare for simultaneous phase shift on my signal. The chamber hummed with energy as human creativity and collective precision worked in perfect synchronization. The anomaly's destructive chaos transformed into creative complexity, its power channeled into establishing new, stable patterns of reality rather than unwriting the old ones. Convergence achieved, Doctor, Novastorm announced finally, her voice filled with wonder. The affected systems have stabilized. The anomaly has been successfully integrated into the quantum fabric of space-time. The chamber erupted in a mixture of human cheers and alien expressions of relief. They had done it, not by fighting chaos, but by teaching it to dance. The very approach that had led to humanity's exile had just saved the galaxy. High Counselor Zixix floated forward, their crystalline form glowing with an unprecedented range of colors. We owe humanity more than gratitude, they announced. We owe you an apology. And perhaps an invitation to return? 20 years after the quantum convergence crisis, as it came to be known, the galaxy had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The quantum crystallization towers of Nova Haven no longer stood alone in their artistic defiance of traditional architecture. Similar structures now rose from worlds across collective space, each incorporating their own cultural interpretations of the harmony between order and chaos. In the central chamber of the Galactic Collective, now relocated to a station that orbited in the space between ordered and quantum-shifted regions, Dr. Estrella Novastorm watched her former student address the assembled delegates. Orion Celestis, now the head of the newly established Harmonic Sciences Division, had grown into his role as a bridge between human creativity and collective precision. The integration of quantum harmonics into our unified scientific framework has opened possibilities we never imagined, he explained, his augmented eyes reflecting the swirling patterns that now characterized the quantum-shifted regions of space. We've learned that the universe speaks in many languages. Mathematics is just one of them. Art, music, dance. These aren't just expressions of culture. They're fundamental tools for understanding reality itself. The chamber, once a monument to rigid order, now featured adaptive architecture that shifted in response to the emotional resonance of its occupants. Even the Etherians had learned to appreciate the beauty of controlled chaos, their crystalline forms dancing with subtle variations that would have been unthinkable 2 decades. Our greatest mistake, High Counselor Zixix admitted, their form pulsing with the new harmony patterns they had learned to embrace, was believing that different meant danger. We sought to impose our order on the universe, when we should have been learning to join its dance. The newest generation of scientists, both human and alien, trained in facilities that merged traditional scientific principles with creative expression. The quantum-shifted regions, once seen as wounds in reality, had become thriving zones of innovation where the laws of physics took on artistic qualities while remaining stable and predictable in their own unique way. We didn't just save the galaxy, Dr. Novastorm reflected, watching a group of young Draconis researchers practice quantum harmonics with a human dance instructor. We helped it evolve. The collective had not just readmitted humanity, they had fundamentally restructured their approach to understanding the universe. The rigid protocols remained as important tools, but they now existed alongside more fluid, creative methodology. The result was a civilization that could face the unknown not with fear, but with curiosity and adaptability. As she prepared to retire from her position as Director of Harmonic Sciences, Dr. Novastorm couldn't help but smile at the irony. Humanity's exile had forced them to embrace their chaos more fully than ever before, leading to discoveries that would have been impossible within the collective's ordered system. In trying to protect themselves from human unpredictability, the collective had nearly lost the very thing they needed most. The universe, she wrote in her final report, has a sense of humor after all. Sometimes the path to the greatest order lies through the heart of chaos itself. We just have to be brave enough to dance with uncertainty and wise enough to let it lead from time to time.